that's going to be with the charrette. And when we get into the real nuts and bolts of this, we're more topics. I think that's what they want from us, is topics for conversation and goals that are able to be fleshed out in the charrettes and by planning boards and things like that. But it's a guideline for direction, if that makes sense. So I think that's what they want from us.
It's Miranda. I'm here, and I think I know the question, and so correct me when I answer if I'm wrong. Yes, we kind of just want a framework in terms of your goals and objectives, because there's no point in getting too far into it and then finding that the community doesn't agree with your goal. And so keeping it relatively broad would be the recommendation. And then through their feedback, you'll have a better sense of what direction to move forward when it comes to the measurable specific component, which is the May piece of all of it.
Atashna, does that make sense? Are you there?
You're muted, Atashna, if you're there.
Okay, Miranda, is there any way you can make the type a little bigger? I'm having a hard time reading that.
Yeah, let me zoom. Sorry. Let me close a few things and zoom in.
Awesome.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah.
I'm here. I just have trouble finding stuff. Yeah, it does make sense. And as you're speaking, because there's a lot of good things under these objectives, and I understand what you're saying about being so specific. And so my suggestion would be to take those objectives and turn them into goals. So, you know, the first goal, I'm just looking at mine, you know, the first objective would be goal 1. The second objective would be goal 2, and just highlight the first sentence instead of going into the detail.
Okay, let's look at yours. Can we scroll to Atashna's? Because in looking through it, I found that I thought Kayla's I really like, and we talked about it yesterday. We agree on a lot of it. I think a couple of the bullet points could be stronger, maybe lift a few things out of mine and insert them, and from yours as well, Atashna. But I feel I'd like to go to yours. Miranda, can we scroll down to Atashna's objectives?
Are we all looking at the same thing? Her Envision 2030 revised statements here, right?
Well, I'm looking at the one that, oh, you're not on the screen.
I've got my computer here, so, but I can look at her.
Well,
it's called group housing goals that we threw into the folder. So it's like the third document down. Do you see that, Kayla?
Sent Thursday at 2:01.
No, oh, do you need me to email this to you? Is that easier?
Yeah, that's what I've got is her.
Okay.
Yeah, we're taking the notes that Atashna made at our last meeting, because when I reviewed them, it seemed like there was detail there that I don't remember agreeing to. But again, I think it's all interesting stuff. I mean, that's why I put out to Ron, Atashna, Ron and Kayla, tried to learn a little bit more from them and from the links that Karen sent me. I've been to the charrette on building code, and the 35% exam, for example, is really high, and it would entail a very different community. So we were going to objective 1. We say adopt incentives, and just take the first sentence, Atashna, as you're suggesting, and then we'll go back later when we're doing objectives and try to address your issues one at a time and try to get some realistic numbers in there for a variety of housing options. Because one of the things I noticed in your notes at the bottom was that buildings should be in conformance with, certain kinds of structural codes. I agree that building for elders and maybe disabled needs to be like that. But if we're really going to have a diversity of housing that addresses people who are low income, a lot of I don't know whether you see what's posted on the web, but there's some very innovative ways to house people very cheaply, and it's quite different from what we consider traditional housing. So, objective one, adopt incentives for developers to build affordable and we talked about the in perpetuity housing. I think that's going to be a turnoff to people, although I think it's a very compelling idea. So, to me, that's a theoretical thing that would involve a lot of study. Objective one, adopt incentives for developers to build affordable housing. I think fits in to some of my goals and stuff anyway. And let's go down to objective two, create future annexation agreements. No, that doesn't fit into anything. I mean, I've been talking with Kayla. I'm very intrigued with her project, but we don't want to be putting that out there. I'd eliminate that one. And
I disagree.
Okay. So you think, Tashna, that we should deviate now from all the former comprehensive plans and decide to expand infinitely outward?
No, that's not what I said.
Well, you're saying create future annexation agreements.
That's right.
Well, the Sundance, for example, is coming up right now. That's going to be a wedding.
I'm focused on housing. I'm focused on housing, period.
Okay.
Nobody else's like visions of their personal visions for their property. Netherland is in a bowl. There's very little available property to expand. And if we're going to provide housing for low and moderate income people, then there needs to be a place to put it. And while many people have visions of housing, we're talking about mass housing here. And I think like all the different kinds of alternative housing or complementary housing and visionary housing, et cetera, is all, it's fine. But on a mass scale, I don't believe it's realistic. On an individual scale, it is, but on a mass scale, it is not. And if we're going to have any kind of housing in Netherlands, there needs to be some expansion. So the door needs to remain open for some annexation. But it's not a broad, wide open statement of, let's expand to between Magnolia Road and Sugarloaf.
Okay, can I chime in that I think will solve that problem? Again, we're getting mired down in the details, and what I said was in the little thing that I sent out to everybody was in the who, what, when, why, where, and how. Under where are we going to do this building? I simply put explore all options, which include changing codes for better density, height, all of the options are on the table, which would then also include the possibility for annexation. Without going into the specifics on annexation at this particular time in the document we're going to send out to people. I think that's not a title on our outline. That's like, number one, all options: A, annexation; B, height change; C, this. So I think without going into calling for specifically for annexation, when we say where are we going to put all this housing, explore all options creates a door for annexation to be included in that.
Okay.
But if you want to get more specific.
that's exactly the kind of hard-hitting bullet point I think we're looking for. I've already addressed objective 3. Is there an objective 4?
Can I just say that when you do explore all housing, my only concern is if someone from this committee is not present at these charrettes, that's people might be left not really understanding what you mean by this. So there may be a desire to add a little bit more of a qualifier behind it, because otherwise it almost feels like a vision statement.
Well, I think
It's too vague.
wait. We're not crafting a final document here. Out of
Right.
respect, I wanted to start with Atashna because I feel like the very specific nature of her comments is not what we're preparing right now. And so, what I'd like to do now is, Kayla, present yours because we're, a little way into our meeting now. Kayla, could you present yours at this time? And Atashna, you might see that some of these are, there it is, very much in line
I've
with.
already read all of Kayla's. I made some notes on my original one, but I would like to go back to Kayla's point, if you can scroll up
What?
to objective 2, I think it is.
Oh, we keep bouncing back and forth. Okay, we're looking at your document then?
Yes,
Right now?
scroll back
Okay.
up to objective 2. Oh, okay. I like that. The explore all options for housing. I understand that. However, I think it needs to be a little bit more explicit and explore all, it needs to be a little more, it needs to be a bit more specific.
I know, but Atashna, before we try to craft something out of whole cloth, let's go back, see what Kayla wrote, see what I wrote, and see if that addresses part of that. Okay?
Fine.
All right, Kayla, can you take it?
Yep, I'm just trying to bring it back up. I'm having to bounce back and forth on from Atashna's to the little crazy thing.
So Kayla, just so you know, in this group housing goals document may actually combine Atashna's and yours and hers. And so you should be able to just stay within that document.
Okay. Well, I just brought up the little thing that you guys scanned for me today. I tried to be. I think we can get so weighted down in specifics because we all have such strong ideas and opinions and knowledge and information and things that we want to have included in this to give us gravitas and weight to what it is we're saying and to show that we know what we're talking about. But I think that what we're being charged to do right now is not specifically that yet. I think that comes in the second stage of all of what we're doing here. So I tried to be really, really encapsulate large ideas that can then be developed, but give enough information that people understand what it is we're talking about. And I needed to have some kind of a format for it. And to me, it's if you have to ask too many questions, then I'm not doing my job as far as explaining to you well enough what it is we want. So in that vein, to try and be very concise, I thought the same format for when you're writing any kind of an article. You want to know who, what, when, why, where, and how. And once you answer each one of those questions, you've pretty much given, form to whatever it is, the idea that you're trying to express. So, who are we? Who are we? Who are we doing this for? Well, we're doing it for our population to create and develop and create housing. Not only, and I look at this 2030 document as a guideline for the next 10 years when we get there, but if it really does its job well, it will serve us way beyond that. So it's not like we have an expiration date when 2030 comes along. If we haven't done everything, but we start all over again. It would be nice if we created a document or our portion of it with the housing segment in it that goes way beyond 2030. That would be icing on the cake, I think. So I said develop and serves the needs of our local, that's a big word, population now, but also in the future. Okay, that says a lot. We're defining who we're doing this for by saying local population. We're not wanting to build for the 10 million people that are going to move to Colorado in the next 30 years. We're doing it for the local population that's already in Nederland or will be here in the next 10 years that have jobs up here, have kids in school that are teachers in here that are our workforce population. Does that make sense? Comment.
Yeah, Kayla, but I would sure like to have you add the business community along with the local population, because that makes a huge difference in terms of where housing might be, and maybe a lot of it in the business community. Could you do that?
Yeah, but you don't think that that's explicit by saying local population is business to me?
Yeah,
it is business and.
I agree with Kayla. Yeah. But
I think it says both. I understand what you're saying, but I think it without stipulating that, then you're starting to get real. We're going to do this for the business people. Then we have to stipulate we're doing it for the school people. Then we stipulate we're doing it for the kids that we're going to work up at the ski area in perpetuity. And so,
well,
does that make sense?
Development is going to occur more where there's potential for it than there is. The local population, there's only 100 or between 90 and 110 buildable lots left in the town. But the entire downtown area is pretty much ready for development. And I'm worried that if you single out just the local population without addressing the business community, then the local population will say, well, this was intended for us. And
hey, Ron, how about we say local population and workforce and local workforce?
But they are part of our local population.
They are.
Yeah, they are. But the business community includes a lot of business owners and property owners who are not part of the local population. In fact, there aren't more than 4 or 5 of the local business people, either property owners or business owners, that live in the town and the local population. And I'm
understanding what you're saying, but if you actually read this, if we are not talking about, when we say the word development, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about specifically housing. We're talking about development in business buildings. We're talking about housing too. I think if you get that specific, you're including, but then you're excluding. So I understand what
we're the housing committee.
I think I'm going to take over
housing committee. It needs to be housing.
Well,
this is the housing committee.
Excuse me. I'm going to take over as chair now, and I'm going to say, take that out right now, please, Miranda, because this is Kayla's presentation. Let's get through Kayla's presentation. I'll go through mine. And if Ron has one, we'll go through his. Go ahead, Kayla.
All right. Ron, talk to me about, at some point, talk to me how you would think you would add something in there without changing the flavor of it, but being inclusive. And I'm all for that, okay?
We're talking about housing, so how about commercial and residential housing?
That's fine.
Different.
Okay.
Commercial housing? Commercial housing, what does that mean?
Well, it means rental housing.
Well, I think
rental
that comes
housing,
under
both short-term and long-term.
Whether it's rental or, I mean, we're talking about rental and saleable properties. We're talking about anything where people can live.
Yeah, either short-term or long-term.
Right. Okay, moving on. That was under what? What are we doing?
Thank you very much for that change.
We're building when the question is what, housing that enhances and builds community. And I think it's really important that we don't think of Nederland as just providing motel space for people that are going to come up and vacation, that we really are concerned about with the goal in mind of having people come to this community and stay and contribute and put their kids in the school here and run businesses and work for people and become part of the fabric of our town. Okay. When do we want to do this? Well, that's established timeline. That's going to be driven by a lot of things. It's going to be driven by the IGA that we have with Boulder County if the town decides to re-up that. It's with the codes, with any builder that wants to do it. But that, I think, is that's to be determined. But I would say now and ongoing, just a continuation. Feedback? Anybody?
It's 10 years. This is 2030. That's
I
the timeline, 2030.
Well,
I
I
understand.
think that we can talk about, I'm not really sure how you create a flow chart, but it's been brought up in other discussions. And I think that, we need to plan ahead for the 7 generations. But at the same time, we're targeting our approach on the next 10 years. So we don't have anything in here about planning for future growth and so forth. And so this would be part of that segment, I think. Establish a timeline will be driven by IGA.
It'll be driven by a lot of things. It'll be driven by economy, space, the economics of building. It'll be driven by a lot of things. We all know that the goal is to start from today and have as much housing that's appropriate that people want built as soon as possible. So it's, you have to establish a timeline on that. I think it's really hard to define, you're going to start tomorrow and you're going to do this when there's so many external forces that will dictate what and when you can do that. So.
Yeah, Miranda, I would suggest that instead of will be driven, and Kayla, what do you think? You might say include IGA codes, include revisions or something like that, because I think will be driven is too passive. We're trying to be proactive here. And the IGA will be part of that timeline.
That's fine. I mean, yeah, however you want to word it.
And you could say an IGA agreements.
Well, that's just, the IGA is just one of the components that'll go into when.
And I would add, I've put in mind that
we can certainly work on this one. I was just trying to be as inclusive but as concise without nailing us to anything that we can't come up with.
Yeah, I guess if we wanted to be inclusive, we would say something like establish a timeline that plans for future growth through measures like affordable housing incentives, code updates, IGA agreements.
And I think all those things will be included when we get to the charrettes. I think people will say, hey, this has something to do with it, that has something to do with it. I agree 100% with what you're saying. I was just trying to be...
Yeah, and maybe we should indent this blue part as a subsection of... I noticed that Karen Blakemore went in and did that with our parks and open space thing. She went in and put a lot of detail behind each one. And from the charrette that I saw with the Boulder about the building code, they did have examples of different ways that the code is being modified. So I think we need to be able to be ready to flesh these things out either now or in the future.
Okay.
But I like the idea of having really snappy, short goals that will engage the community. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Okay. Local builds community, a timeline. Okay. You know, and then we can go on, maybe in a separate document that we've already well started. I mean, a lot of the stuff in your document, Atashna, I think you need to talk to Kayla, as I have done, talk to Ron, as I have done, and find out what is realistic in terms of your numbers and in terms of the in perpetuity. We did talk about the flex rent thing last time. You know, those are all things that are actually fairly complicated. Probably don't belong in goals, but they're discussion points. And I can try to put together a file with that and put it up on the Google Doc or send it to Miranda. Google Doc and I don't get along very well every day, but
Well, I
so
think, I think we're getting there. I think we're all we all have our ideas, and we're all coming from whatever knowledge we have gleaned over the years and gotten from experiences we've had, which helps us to be able to speak with some authority. And I think that's a good thing. But how do we put that into a document that gives some kind of form? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put all of that information that we've all gotten, knowledge we've all learned over the years, experiences, and put it in a document that helps guide the concept of housing in this document moving forward. So.
well, exactly.
So,
And I think that if you've looked in that public engagement folder, one of the things they show, Deb has put up there, is how they present projects on a web page, and she's working out now details. But I think if we can get a better idea of timelines in that also can help formulate when we come out with specifics. But I think the specifics we have to be very careful of, because if it's not practical, or only practical when you're looking at a 10-story building or something, then probably not part of our overall town image.
well, the
Anyway,
whole point of it is that if we put these things in a document, we have to understand, and people must understand, that these are not rules; they're goals. So that gives us somewhat a certain amount of flexibility, where we can say, this is aspirational, this is what we would like, what we're aiming for, what we're trying to do. It doesn't mean that we're writing this in stone, and if you're going to build something, you have to do this, you have to do that, because that'll all be, I mean, that's up to each individual builder to do what. So, does that make sense?
sure.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Where are we here? Oh, I just lost my computer. Okay. The next thing is, why are we doing this? Well, that's an easy one. We're doing this to provide an opportunity for housing with dignity, a positive future for our residents. Now, I don't know if those are just too broad and too kumbaya-ish for everybody, but we're building housing to give people a decent, good place to live, to create a good future for them and for our community. I'd love feedback from you guys. Why are we building? Why are we building? Why is anybody building?
I think that's great. I think it covers the idea, of course. You're trying to
Okay.
provide for the needs of the populace, and that says it very well. I like
Okay.
it.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Moving on. Where are we going to build? Then again, exploring all the options. What are our options? There's an option to annex. There's an option to build up. There's an option, we have to look at all of the alternative housings, places, and ideas that we have not explored in the last 10 years as we move forward. So I think, to be short and sweet, where do we want to do this? We want to do it everywhere we can, everywhere that code, that the rules we have that we're being, whether it's IGA restrictive or code restrictive or this, we're looking at all of the options we possibly can to build housing in Nederland. So again, comments, I would love people's opinions, whether they want to expand on that or they think that's a broad enough statement to cover the idea of where we want to do this.
I like it, Kayla. I might add under the blue part, infill, since that's already been established as a goal. Infill
Yeah, but if you
in
say
resident.
infill, that excludes annexation.
No, it doesn't. They've already passed the additional dwelling unit thing, and it's a current issue here in town, Kayla.
You have them both there, so neither one is excluding the other.
Okay. All right.
I think you should too. What are the options? And again, we go back to increasing density and redefining what a unit can be. So
that's sort of exploring all the options, unless
right.
you want to specifically set them down now in this document, or whether we want to have that be something that we flesh out and we give more guidance to during the charrettes.
Well, I'll certainly be glad to help you define the unit much more broadly than what it's being said here. I mean, you've got 7-9 words there. That's short enough. If you want to define the unit, that'll take about 150 words.
Exactly. Okay, and how are we going to go about doing all of this? And I said, follow the public engagement process as outlined by the Envision 2020. That's how we're going to go about it.
2030.
2030.
10 years.
Wow.
I'm with you.
Okay. If we want to go on to Miranda, do you have any comments, or what do you?
As I understood it, I think May wanted to go over hers and then Ron, and then try to tie all four together.
Okay. So whoever's next.
Ron, let me go next, and I'll be sure to save you some time. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm thinking now, especially after looking at Kayla's list and the way we're doing the bullet points after the goals, is that a lot of the stuff I have in here could be lifted up and put underneath one of your headings, stuff that we agree on. So that's what I would do at this point. So I think the allow for the construction of housing to meet the needs of our local population now and for the next 10 years is pretty much your first one. If we want to tinker around and mess with it, we can. But I think yours is really good. It's short, to the point. And then we have through residential and commercial housing. I think that should be a bullet point. And then we could put in there, consider overlay districts or zoning modifications, update and adopt local building codes. let's go ahead and drop them in there and look at them and see how they look, and if people agree on that.
Okay,
Miranda
we have that code updates. We mentioned that.
Yeah, but let's just drop it in. I've got some stuff in there that you don't have.
Okay.
Ooh, you got the
So
whole thing, looks like.
That would go under what? Or what do you put?
Actually,
Under who?
yeah,
Okay.
no, actually, you're right. I think, update, and I don't know. This might take some time. Miranda, I'm sorry to put it back. Let's just go through it and see where we have points of agreement. And then we can work it into the document later, like Karen Blakemore did with the Parks and Rec.
Well, what I can do after May, I could do like the who, what, where, when, just the category that connects to Kayla's, and then, like you said, we can then move them later.
Yeah, that's
what we do that.
Yeah,
okay.
And that way we'll know which ones we're in agreement about. So one of the things we talked about at the last meeting was basing sewer and water taps on the square footage of the housing unit. Are we still in agreement on that?
We're in agreement that should be a discussion for the charrette. I don't think that's getting pretty specific. That's getting majorly specific. That would be a goal for.
So what would that be under, Kayla? Who, what, where, in your opinion? What? How? That would be under how, wouldn't it? We're just talking about when we flesh out our other document. Things that we agree
I think
on.
that's one for the charrette, and I think it's definitely a really a good idea to have there. I think it's again one of those things that's just as specific as Atashna saying she thinks there should be, 35% in perpetuity housing, and we're not. That's not this discussion. That's the next. That's the charrette discussion. All of those bullet points that we want to get real specific
Kayla,
about.
Got it.
I think to that point, though, you want to offer some of these conversations. Like, I definitely will put this before the charrette, because you need to have something to guide that conversation. And so I would encourage you to give feedback on me.
Okay, so Miranda, if you want us to get that specific, there's a ton of stuff we can put in here from all of us. We all have these various ideas about things.
That's what I'm trying to create, Kayla, is the idea of a document that is framed by your points and agree on stuff that we all kind of agree on. My thing on basing sewer and water tops on square footage does not have specific numbers in it. So I don't think it's that specific.
That's why I think the measurement piece don't have numbers, have concepts that you can then get feedback on.
Exactly.
Okay, could I inject something here? And it's germane to the sewer and water tap fees, and that is the people who have the smaller units also have the smaller incomes, and it's a great advantage to them if they could pay their water and tap fees on an amortized basis where they do it monthly. And in fact, I did this with my water tap fees back east where my wife's home is in Bethesda, Maryland. We paid the water and sewer fee over a 10-year period to the municipality, and then it was done. And,
oh, man. Will you write that in, Miranda, please? Amortized tap fees? Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, that's it. Just amortized tap fees. You don't have to elaborate as much as I did just now. That's adequate because, again, we can go into greater detail at the charrette level.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so, and if anybody really has a problem with it, chime in. Consider overlaid districts or zoning modifications if needed to accommodate workforce and affordable housing after going through the public engagement process. So that's kind of getting specific about overlay districts and zoning modifications. But these are already things that are being discussed. So I think they'd make good topics for discussion at the charrettes. What is an overlay district? What zoning modifications have we already done? Does it affect you? You know, stuff like that.
Well, there's all kinds of districts, including overlay districts. Colorado has 71 distinct different types of districts, so you have to
And
define.
you would be the one to tweak this one then. I'm going to ask you to do that.
Sure,
So
I'd be glad to.
Okay,
maybe,
thanks.
Ron, we put discuss, I don't want to say multiple options to give flexibility in the building process. How are we going to put that?
That's pretty good, Kayla. I don't mind that at all.
Okay.
Well, I'd say the building permit process.
Building permit process. Okay.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. Do we want to indent that and make it one that we all agree on and give it a category?
All right.
This is what? How?
That would be under a how, yeah. How are we going to do this?
Okay.
Are you moving overlay districts underneath this bullet point, or is overlay districts as still its own category? And if so, what do you want it to fall under?
No, Ron's going to edit it, but what would it be? Leave it the way it is, and then we just have to assign it a category.
Well, and I'd like to bring back here too the idea of allowing the entire community, the voting base, to vote on larger projects, because that way we really know what the town wants. You have a vote, and if 51% of the town, of the 800 voters or 1,000 voters that vote on it, say yes, then very honestly, the little cabals of very powerful, noisy people that don't want it are basically overruled by absolute democracy. And I like
So,
that.
Would
Yes,
you consider that to be a how? Where would you put that? What category?
I'd say that's a how, yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
I would be okay with putting it there.
Okay,
So,
anybody
you say
object to that?
No, I think it's great. Engage local population in, and it's not permitting, in the what? Conceptual? No, it's more than conceptual.
No, not conceptual, approval.
Yeah.
No.
Well, let's get through the rest of my document, guys, before we start adding a bunch of stuff. Okay?
I was just trying to word what he said about the.
No,
I
it's
think
the
I already
approval
have it.
process,
Adding
not the conceptual process.
Yeah.
They're already engaged in the conceptual process.
So that's the how.
So approval.
It's the approval process.
Right.
Okay. All right. This one might be redundant. Ooh, you're breaking up there on the screen. Can somebody read? Oh, there it is. Update and adopt local building codes. Okay, this is real specific. But we're talking about it in the update to the building code, so it's pertinent. That allow for new types of housing and building materials, and then I list some. So, what would anybody got an objection to that? Want to take anything out? Word it better?
Okay, read
Stop
it again,
it at
because I'm not.
materials. Just stop it at materials and building materials, period.
Okay, I'm all right with that. And even concepts. You know, if we put in building materials and concepts, we open the door to a discussion of stuff like co-ops. How do people feel about that? I like it. And concepts.
Co-op housing can be real successful or it can be really a failure, but I think it's a good idea to include it.
Yeah, just say concepts. And that way, if somebody wants to run with it, not going to be me, they can.
You want to take out materials, or you want materials and concepts?
Maybe we should invert them, concepts, or building materials and concepts. I like that. Sometimes when you make it kind of counterintuitive, it makes people slow down when they're reading it.
What about housing concepts and building materials?
I was
Okay.
going to say I would put the concept first and the materials second.
Okay.
Update and
All
adopt
right.
local building codes that allow for new types of, or instead of new types, just alternative types. They're not new. They've been around forever. We just haven't decided we were going to let them be applicable
Yeah.
in town.
And I'm thinking that if we were really gonna be productive, we could add well, Kayla's already got it. It's the timeline thing. This is maybe we're finally getting out of the how and getting to the timeline. Building a timeline? Maybe we should talk about building the timeline, because I think that's where we've broken down sometimes. And if we go to the end, I don't want to keep people late. So I want to get to the bottom of my stuff here, and I want to leave a few minutes for Ron, because his comments are always so right on. Consider and choose some town approved alternatives for low income or transitional housing, such as recreational vehicles. And this may be overly detailed, but when you think about it, if you want to build a very inexpensive home, and I think they're called carriage homes or mother-in-law units, sometimes you don't have road access to these. Anyway, I want to keep going. Let's kind of skip over that one because Tashna might not like it. Or no, let me go ahead and read it. Consider and choose some town-approved alternatives. Consider and choose in the building code or something like that. I left a couple words out. And code for low-income or transitional housing. For example, I have an empty lot. People could put an RV in there that's self-contained, and I could pay my taxes, and that person would have a killer space. But under town code, I can't do it. So that's why I'm putting it in. As Kayla said, everybody's got an interest. Trailers, small-scale housing, which, like I was describing before, which may not offer access by vehicle, as well as consider the requirement that requires all housing to connect to water and sewer taps. That may be going too far, but if you really want to build cheap stuff, you put in a composting toilet and a small cistern. Anyway, take controversial projects that impact. I'm going to skip over that because I don't want to get bogged down in that one. I want to get all the way to the bottom, and then I'm going to let Ron take it. And if you want to go back to that, Ron.
I do want to go back to that and say that's almost mandatory.
Oh, man. Okay. I did not think I was going to get much agreement on that one.
No. I think you need to have, when things are so controversial, usually among small groups, let the voters decide on whatever it is. I mean, Topher Donahue, when he was on the board, was always saying that to the board of trustees, and very rarely, if ever, did they do it. I think it's a great idea. The only thing is, you got to have those things scheduled at regular elections, because the town can't afford special elections for things like that. So we might want to put that in, that the vote would have to come. And again, that may be charrette material as far as the detail, but you don't want to try to create things that burden the town financially that could be very highly successful. But anyway, thanks.
There's also a precedent set if somebody came along and wanted to challenge that. When they annexed Caribou Ridge into town, they did not take that to a vote, so they've set precedent for annexation and doing developments without taking it to a vote of the people. So you have,
and that could be an option. I mean, you don't.
Absolutely.
I mean,
but we're not in the court of law.
You could say if the developer so requests, if he's happy with the decision the board makes, okay, but if he requests the town vote on it, if he gets a decision from the board he doesn't like, then allow him or her, as is in the case of the two individuals here, to have the option to put it in front of the voters.
Well, Ron, that brings up the fact that sometimes the board approves things that the voters don't want. So I would be okay with that, but I think we should also add that if more than so many people sign a petition. I mean, there is a referendum process, but the town has to pay for a vote. And I think we should really look at the work that Deb's doing on the public engagement so we can figure out how we make this timeline that Kayla's talking about. When do we flip it over to a vote? You know, if you talk about something for a year, 2 years, 3 years, you can't get consensus, maybe it's time to schedule a vote. That's
Well,
all.
I'd say you give that option to the developer. If things go on and on for a long period of time, yeah, you need something and some vehicle to bring it to fruition one way or the other, or defeat. Fruition or defeat. And we don't have that vehicle.
So, Ron, you were looking at the point that I made. Take controversial projects that impact or potentially impact a significant part of the population directly to the voters through the referendum process. And you would add,
Well, no, I wouldn't say that because look, a referendum has to be done on an issue that's just been passed within 30 days of the time the
okay,
issue's been passed. Now, the same process is called an initiative process, but that's different than what you would be doing with the development.
but we already
Uh,
have the initiative process.
yeah, the state provides the initiative process.
No, we don't. If you don't like the referendum, take out initiative.
No, take out a referendum because a referendum refers to something that's just been passed.
Okay, so
An initiative is something that hasn't been passed, that is voter initiated.
I think what the comment that I liked and that we agree on, we could say directly to the voters through a regularly scheduled election.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's good.
Okay.
I would also, just as a taking care of our butts on this one, is to run this by an attorney and make sure that that we can legally do that. Because, for instance, we may have just as an example, if I put the project I'm trying to do to a vote of the people in the town and everybody says, yay, we want this, but the Boulder County Commissioners say, no, I'm not going to allow you to do that, they have the final say at that point. So what are your legal benefits and limits to what you're suggesting?
That's my understanding that if the annexation process is initiated, the county doesn't have any say in it. I don't think that, I'm not sure of that, but my understanding is if a community wants to annex something, they can do it, and the county doesn't have much of a say whatever.
Well, let me interject here because in the past, annexations did require a vote by the people because of the restrictions we have here geographically. And so it was only through the work of Alicia Reese that the board became the governing body. So I'd say skip the attorney's fees, and because it probably, the code has been rewritten to say that annexations are at the determination of the board. So if we want a regularly scheduled election, instead of saying Miranda to confirm with attorney, you say a regularly scheduled election and take steps to return Nederland to a vote of the people on annexations or anything else. A return.
Yeah, I'm for the anything else.
Yeah,
although,
we don't want to restrict it.
We're supposed to be talking about housing, and we probably have to restrict our discussion to that. But I'm for the anything else thing too, just as an aside. I could stick it in there if you want to, and somebody might criticize us for getting out of our bailiwick. But I think it's a good idea.
I don't think we should restrict it to annexation. Take controversial. Let's see how we can reduce this. We want to reduce it by half the number of words because we got 1 minute. Take controversial projects that impact or potentially impact a significant part of the population directly to the voters through a regularly scheduled election And say,
Period.
okay. And then if the lawyer says, oh, you can't do that, then we change the code and take steps to change the code if necessary to allow for this.
Okay, sure, that's good.
Yeah, and take steps if necessary after regularly scheduled election. Take steps if necessary to modify code to allow for this.
I would say instead of where necessary to where needed.
Okay, if needed or where needed.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, well, we are officially at 6 o'clock. So let's go down to Kayla's goals again. And let's say, instead of establish a timeline, Kayla, can we go back down to your bullet point there, establish a timeline?
Sure.
Build timelines. Build timelines for what? Don't take anything out because I like the way she has it, but I like the idea of building timelines, and we could organize our information better if we.
Well, okay, I had, establish a timeline, and then Miranda put for housing that plans for future growth. Establish a timeline for housing.
Well, I think we already stated that we want present and future growth for present residents. We already said that. We're talking about building a timeline, aren't we? Didn't you say that in goal number 1, Kayla?
Well, are you saying under who, or are you saying under when?
Under who?
Under who? Okay. Serves the needs of our local population now and in the future through commercial and residential housing.
Yeah, I think the residential and commercial housing should be a bullet point, and that we should keep our goals really short. If you're okay with that.
I'm okay with that. That was Ron's. We were putting that in.
I agree. We need that in there, but we'll Natasha's going to want to enlarge on the affordable in that section, and I think that's going to be great. I'm just thinking about trying to organize this. So who, we have a really short, snappy what, it looks great. Let's go down to the next one. When, establish a timeline, and a vehicle for building timelines? I don't know. Establish a timeline, that's great. That plans for present and future growth, that's perfect, right? Why? To provide an opportunity for housing with dignity, a positive future for our residents. Where? Explore our options. How? Follow public engagement process. I think it's great. And all the stuff in blue, we're going to organize stuff from mine, stuff from Atashna's, stuff that Ron's going to elaborate on, Kayla's going to elaborate on, and we're going to be putting together kind of a cheat sheets, if you will.
I just wanted to give you just kind of a time frame check. So next Friday when you meet, that's when you really need to have this pulled together, because we'll put it before the full committee on the 30th. So I would encourage, I know May, you referenced this earlier, but connecting offline with one another. You are not, you don't violate sunshine law if you get together. So we could host another one of these on a different date or time, but you only have 1 week left to get your draft done.
Could someone email me this so I can work on the things I've committed to embellish?
Do you want me to send you a link to it, Ron, or you want me to download it and send it as a separate document?
Yeah, if you could do separate as document, I'd appreciate.
Okay.
Yeah, send it to me too, please.
I'll send it to everyone. I'll download it and send it out.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great. And then we can make any kind of adjustment.
Scribble notes on the side and come back and and look at it.
Yep.
So what do people want to do? Just work on it throughout the week and maybe trade a document back and forth and then have a meeting a week from today, or what?
I think we should have conversations, and oh gosh, I don't know who all's been inoculated or how comfortable anybody is sitting 6 feet apart. I mean, if I could set up a big table on the stage of the theater and we could sit way far apart from one another, but we can actually look at your face and talk to you and make notes as we do it. I would say, even if we have masks on and we're 6 feet apart, is anybody comfortable doing that? To have a
Well, I
meeting like
am,
that?
because I'm 19 days past my second shot, so
Yeah,
it
and
depends on everybody else.
I've had my first shot. My second one's the 30th, so I'm pretty good, I think, with a mask and social distancing. It should be fine. Akashna, how do you feel about that? Are you comfortable or not?
Well, I'm comfortable with it. For me, it's just a time thing because I have a full-time job, and my availability
Is tight?
yes. It's like I could do it sometime tomorrow. Next Saturday, I have a commitment, so I couldn't do it, but I could do it the following Sunday as well.
I was thinking sometime within this 1 week period, so as soon as Miranda emails us or we downloads all of this information to each one of us, we have a day or so to work on it, to come up with finalizing ideas, and then get together before our next Friday meeting is what I was thinking about. I don't know if that works into everybody's schedule or not.
Okay, I'm just looking at my at my calendar here.
Feedback. How about you, May? What's I know your schedule's real tight with your grandkids and kids and stuff.
Well, I kind of think we need to kind of focus maybe each one on what they're best at. And I think that
So you don't think there's a need to get together and
I'm
once
not
we've
especially interested in going out. I don't go out.
okay.
I don't especially like going out.
All right. Well, we can phone
Yeah,
taggy
I'm
this.
pretty much with May.
Okay.
I never go anywhere. I don't like going
Yeah,
out.
I like it right where I am. And,
All right. So why don't we get the documents then from Miranda, put our individual notes on it, and do some writing, and then maybe by, let's say, Monday, we should start phone tagging one another and have conversations, and if you feel necessary, and just run it by, or bounce ideas off of one another, and then we can present them finally and come up with our cohesive document that we think we'll have ready it should be ready by the 26th, so that then we can present it on the 30th to the whole gang, to all of the committees. Isn't that right, Miranda?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
well, thanks for that scheduling reminder, Kayla. But I'm thinking that maybe, Atashna, I'm concerned about the feedback that we've had in the meetings and the numbers that you're showing on your goals. So I don't know what to suggest, but I don't think we've agreed on some of your goals. And so I'd suggest that you in particular reach out to Kayla and Ron because they're developers, and me as well, just so we can talk about it. And Karen and Miranda are really knowledgeable too. But I think that rather than trying to put a really high number, I don't think that's a goal of anybody that I saw in the survey, to become kind of a really high density haven for low affordable housing. It's just not practical. So,
35% is not a high goal. 20% is tokenism.
okay, well, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you an assignment then. By
I don't
Monday,
have the time for assignments.
well,
And right now
we
I've gone through
wanna
my
get-
stuff and I'll send it to you because I've cut it way down to what I think this, I think what we're doing here. And I've
you have to be
eliminated
able to,
everything.
okay, you have to be able to show some kind of practical application in our environment for it to work.
To me, this is
Atashna,
practical. And you know,
Atashna,
wait a second. Right now, I'm not feeling very well. So it's not a good time for me to be participating in this. I mean,
Oh,
at
I'm
this
sorry.
moment.
I'm so sorry
At
about
this moment,
I'm
because I
sorry.
have a tendency when I'm not feeling well to get sharp and short.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear. You sound like you're really overtaxed.
Could
And
we kind of settle on the next meeting? I realize this is a little going, but we're all on a timeline pressure
we
here.
have our next group meeting, Ron, is the 26th, 1 week from today.
On
okay.
Friday.
Same time, on a Friday.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Atashna, can I just ask a simple question? And I am so not wanting to feel threatened or anything. I statistically would like to know where you get your numbers, if this is industry documented and things.
No, traditionally, the only number that I could put out there that is a traditional industry standard is 20% of
That's like
development
Boulder
for affordable
County
housing.
housing.
That's the baseline. And then in urban areas where it mostly goes on, a lot of developers can buy out of that
Right.
for in lieu of, which I think is disgusting. And the 20% or 25% is disgusting. We have a housing crisis, and the point is to try to, even if it's just a little tiny drop in the ocean, to provide some dignified housing for seniors and low and moderate income people, and to offer like 1 unit for every 5 or 10 is disgusting to me.
Well, I did have a long conversation with, so y'all know, with Christy Vendetti the other day, and just so y'all know that the Tungsten Village up there, which was sold to the county and the town as an affordable housing project, there are only 6 out of the 26 units in that they consider affordable housing, and the rest of them are low, are quote on the sliding scale of whatever the medium income is in the area here. So they also did not provide and are not providing an on-site managerial person to take care of all their properties, all of the combined Boulder County housing properties up here. That's just an aside. It has nothing to do other than just throwing out a fact to you guys. So
they do have a property manager, but he's not on site. He does visitations. Christy, Colleen, and I worked on that.
Yeah.
We worked on the tungsten thing together, and yes, we wanted 12 units, period, for that are truly affordable, which meant for not just vouchers, but also the 30 percentile. And the phrase that they kept using was, we have to balance our portfolio. So they gave us 6 to be grateful for. And I've
Which, you know what
spoken with,
that is? That's a crock of crap, just between you and me. They
Yeah.
could have done a lot more than that, and that's not what they
Yes.
said when they were building this whole project for the town. They sold the town on something that they did not deliver on. But
no, Kayla, they did not sell the town on it. They lied. They straight out lied.
I was trying to be kind. I've disliked that project since day one. So
Well, you
I
got
don't
to
dislike the
supported.
project, but it's another
This is
issue.
probably
Yep.
a discussion we might want to
Yep.
continue offline, folks.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I will be calling each one of you at a certain point and hopefully have a conversation. Atasha, I hope you feel better. I don't mean to add any stress to to your being. And so thanks for your
This
feedback.
is just
I
a very
appreciate it.
emotional issue for me.
It is for all of us,
I'll
I
send
think.
everybody my, my stuff and you can incorporate it into what we're doing here.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll definitely do that. Tashna and, yeah, it sounds great. We're going to have this organized before you know it. All right, meeting adjourned. See you back here in a week, and we'll
Thank
talk
you,
soon.
everybody. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Be well.
I thought we had a great meeting. Thanks.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Ron.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye now.